Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're all very welcome to the 17th webinar in the Irish Bioenergy Association webinar series. My name is Sean Finan. I'm the CEO of the Irish Bioenergy Association, and this morning's topic is running a successful bioenergy business in rural Ireland. And we'll hear from Nick Cotter, who will tell the story of the Cotter Brothers. Before we begin, for some of our new attendees this morning, just a quick outline of what we do in the Irish Bioenergy Association. We are the representative body for the sector on the island of Ireland. We cover biomass, biogas, biofuels, biochar, wood fuels and energy crops. Our work involves lobbying, policy, advocacy work, and also providing knowledge and information to all interested stakeholders. We have a broad and diverse membership, and you can find out more on our website, www.irbia.org. This is the 17th webinar in our series, and as you can see, we've had a broad range of topics so far through our series. All the recordings of all the webinars on the screen are available through our website and on our YouTube channel. Our webinars go out on a fortnightly basis from 9:30 to 10:30, and if you would like to become a member of the Irish Bioenergy Association, feel free to get in touch with either myself or Teresa O'Brien. Morning's agenda, we will hear from Nick Cotter Jr. of Cotter Brothers, and we will have a panel discussion then with Noel Gavigan, who works with us in the Irish Bioenergy Association as our technical executive, where we will discuss the solid fuels consultation that was published only in recent days by the department. And also we will take your questions and provide answers to any questions you have for Nick or indeed any of us on the webinar this morning. Just to save the date, the next webinar will take place on Wednesday, the 10th of March from 9:30 to 10:30, and we will focus on a biogas topic, and we will present a case study of a biogas operator in Ireland. And all details will be published on our social media channels, and we look forward to welcoming you again in 2 weeks' time. So to introduce this morning's discussion, we are showcasing the work of Nick and Jack Cotter. They have developed a successful firewood business in rural Ireland. Cotter Brothers Firewood are a member of the Wfqa, and they're selling a quality certified material to a growing market in the Midwest of Ireland. Nick will focus on the future challenges and opportunities for firewood and bioenergy, and he will also focus on their own business and how they've developed it over the years. We will then have the panel discussion, as I said, at the end of the formal presentation, where Noel will join us for a discussion on the solid fuel consultation. Our speaker this morning is Nick. Joins us this morning to speak, and Nick has developed his business alongside his brother Jack when they were aged 13 and 11 respectively. They've received many accolades since, and Nick was recognized for the Cotter Brothers entrepreneurial success from UCC, and he was awarded an Innovation and Entrepreneurship Scholarship in 2019. They have maintained WFQA certification since 2013 and are taking active involvement in the oversight committee of the WFQA. And the Cotter Brother Firewood is a prime example of how the firewood industry is providing local employment, but also boosting renewable fuels and providing renewable fuels to consumers and helping to ensure that money stays in the local economy and boosts rural Ireland. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you this morning Nick Cotter, and now over to you, Nick, for your presentation. So I'll stop sharing and allow you to share your slides.
Perfect. Thank you for the introduction, Sean, and good morning, everyone. I'll get kicked off here. So, I suppose to start, the firewood industry is an exciting place at the moment, with a great deal of development and transition ongoing. And it's worth pointing out that bioenergy by a country mile is the largest source of renewable energy today. So it is leading the way in hitting renewable energy targets and in reducing carbon emissions. And a key thing to remember is that under the Paris Agreement and in 4 out of the 5 scenarios that set out a pathway to keeping warming below 1.5 degrees, bioenergy is a massive proportion of renewable energy. In fact, it's a bigger proportion than wind and solar. So it's imperative to remember that discrediting bioenergy would run the risk of failing to deliver on Ireland's environmental responsibilities as an EU member state and the overall objective of preventing climate catastrophe. Now, there are challenges with issues around fuel quality and its effect on air quality being the subject of much debate recently. And these concerns are correct. Wet wood is damaging air quality, so it should be banned. And this is likely to happen very soon when the solid fuel regulation comes into place. So producers, like ourselves, have to take a proactive approach and improve their production processes to ensure that they can meet the new minimum or the new maximum mandatory standard. So in short, the firewood industry is in good health, and that will continue to be the case for the foreseeable future, provided we take a proactive approach and address issues as they arise. So I suppose on this note, it's helpful to hear from the likes of us who have had the standard met already through being a member of WFQA. So I'm going to show you what we do, and maybe you can take some of it and get some ideas and incorporate it into your own project. So I'm going to tell you about our business, Cotter Bros Firewood, and how we produce this high quality WFQA certified firewood to the domestic sector. So why did we get into producing and selling firewood? So for context, there's 3 people involved in the farm. It's myself and my brother Jack, who can't be with us here today because he's working on another project that we have. And then my father, Nick Sr., as well, will be involved. So I suppose our family owns some forestry, and we saw it as an ideal opportunity. So Jack and I decided when we were 13 and 11 to start packing net bags in the evenings after school and knocking door to door in the local housing estates in Abbeyfield. So we chipped away with this for about 3 years, and it was actually beginning to turn into a sizable business. So at that point, we started taking it seriously. We wrote a business plan. We took on 2 part-time employees and improved our processes so we produce better firewood. And there was 3 reasons why we chose to go ahead with doing this. And number 1 was so that we could get paid better. When I looked at it, we were going to all this effort to produce the firewood, but we weren't getting paid particularly well for it because it was of a lesser quality. I mean, we were getting paid an okay price, but we want to do things well. And I thought if we invested in more stacking space and some new equipment, we'd be able to produce drier, cleaner firewood and get paid better for it at the other end. Number 2 was a want to join the Wood Fuel Quality Assurance Scheme. The Wood Fuel Quality Assurance Scheme, in simple terms, is the Board BA Quality Assurance mark, but for firewood. It guarantees that when the consumer sees this label on the bag, they know that it's ready to burn. So that is firewood that is at a maximum of 25% moisture content. It's cut uniformly, correctly labeled, and the raw material is sustainably sourced. So I felt that being certified under the scheme was essential so that when the consumer saw the mark on the bag, they would have confidence in what we were selling and would build trust with them. And the truth is, we would not be where we are today without WFQA. So being a member has been hugely beneficial. And the third reason was my general belief that there's always room for one more good one. When I looked at the competition, I felt that if we could differentiate ourselves from what's already out there and try to be the best at it, then we could succeed. So we anchored ourselves to 5 characteristics to make what we do unique. So all our logs are locally sourced, they're WFQA assured, we're carbon neutral, it's clean firewood, which we'll look at later, and it's award winning. And it's good. We're making the best use of the lowest quality logs that come out of a forest that are good for nothing else. Those logs are being grown locally and they're being used locally. It's fuel of the region for the region. So it's really the essence of the circular economy. So I thought, provided we could get our name out there and get a good reputation, then there was no reason why we couldn't succeed. So we went ahead and committed to it. And of course, the business grew exponentially over the following years, and it has become a great success. So we're now an industry-leading firewood supplier, selling nationwide and producing some of the best quality firewood in the country. So on to the how. And our fundamental aim is to produce super premium firewood. And I suppose there's 3 levels to the business. We've got the production, we've got quality control, and we've got marketing. So at the production level, our facility is based on the family farm in Abbeyfield, County Limerick, where we take the raw material and we convert it into firewood. So as I kind of mentioned just there, what the wood that we're using is part of the cascading use of wood. So what that means is basically in a forest, we'll produce several different types of logs. We have the biggest and most valuable category being saw log, which goes to making your timber lengths for construction. Next is the logs that goes for making stakes for fencing. Then we have logs that go for making pallets. And finally, we have pulp, which is what's used to make our firewood. Pulp is all the crooked and bent trees that are good for nothing else. They are the lowest quality material coming out of the forest. So as I say, this is the cascading use of wood. So firewood is excellent really because it turns a really low value good that's not good for much into a high value product for home heating that can replace dirty solid fuels and can reduce carbon emissions. We source all logs as closely as possible to minimize transport costs and maximize efficiency. And the species is predominantly spruce with some pine and larch mixed in. This is because this is what's grown in our local area. So as a result, the only type of firewood we sell is softwood. The logs are then transported to our farm and are stored on stacking racks we've built. The logs are covered with plastic over the top to keep them dry and are stacked on top of the really big logs that we can't actually put through the processor. So these are our stacking logs and they keep the raw material off the ground and they keep it dry. And the stacks are strategically located so we take advantage of the wind. We actually live on a hill is where we're at, so it's quite a breezy spot. And the benefit of that is we're able to dry the firewood really efficiently. Now the raw material will be stacked outside for about 18 months. We'll pull some logs out and do some moisture content tests every now and then. And what we're looking for is when it's under 25%. And at that point, we decide to move it from the logs over to our cutting area. So this is our cutting facility. We've got an automated log deck and we've got a posh firewood processor. And for someone like myself who grew up on video games, you could draw a lot of comparisons. It's just a really simple joystick that you move left, right, up and down to operate it. So it's really easy, really efficient. The man doesn't get tired from having to do things, having to do too many things manually. So it's a really efficient way of making lots of firewood. So the next level then is quality control. And I suppose the ultimate when it comes to firewood is moisture content. And the maximum moisture content of firewood for home heating should be 25%, but ideally 20%. The drier it is, the higher quality it is. And that's because dry firewood contains more heat and it burns with greater efficiency. So it's simply better value for customers. And it's better for the environment too, because it produces 70 to 90% less particulate emissions, and that's our concern on the air quality, than wet firewood. So it's better for air quality. Now, moisture content can be determined by using a moisture meter that you then prod into the wood and you get a reading, but we find it isn't accurate enough. It kind of tends to be accurate to maybe plus or minus 5%. So we actually use the oven dry method, which is 100% accurate. So a short video here, I think the sound was given a bit of grief, so I'll just talk you through it. So what we've done is there's several pieces here, some slivers that we've taken out of a batch. And what we do is we number them as you can see it. And then I'm going to pop it up on top of the weigh scale. And give me a second here. So what we're doing here is we're going to weigh each piece before it goes into the oven. So this would be the piece coming directly out. So weigh it, we write it down, and we do that for all those pieces. And then we put them into the oven that's actually inside in our house at 104 degrees to be precise, because we don't want to burn any of the volatiles. So it goes into the oven and we'll basically keep weighing it over and over again, several hours until it stops losing weight. And at that point, we know that all the water has been taken out of the wood. So I'm going to pick a piece here, 5.1, and that weighed in at 185. And then we can see here that at 2 o'clock and then at 6 o'clock, it was weighing 150 grams consistently. So we know it's lost all the weight. So whip out the calculator, pretty simple calculation, 185 minus the final weight being 150. And we see we've got 35 grams of water in that piece. Divide it back into the original weight, and that's going to provide us with the moisture content. And for that piece, we were sitting around 19%. So we do that across all the pieces, and then we average it out. And as you can see there, we're getting 18%. And that basically means that it's ready to burn, because that's going for our kiln dried standard stuff, which we're aiming for under 20% moisture. So it's spot on, it's ready to go. So the next step of quality control then is sizing. So uniformly cutting a firewood to an appropriate size is essential so it can burn properly. And the international standard we conform to under Wfqa rules is ISO 17225. And this outlines standardized lengths, diameters, and tolerances. So for us, we cut our firewood to 20 centimeter length and a max diameter of 15 centimeters. From our years of experience, this is what suits the majority of people's appliances. The last part of the quality control then is the cleanliness of our firewood. So, sorry. So one of the first complaints we got when we actually started at the Firewood was that it was dusty and it was bringing in a lot of dirt into the house or the customer. And we are of the opinion that a complaint is a gift. So we took this on board and went about remedying the problem, and this led to building our own firewood cleaner. So here is a short video of how it works. So I'll leave this play away and you can just give that a watch. So we've got an Infeed Conveyor here. So Algie, our man here, is going to tip some of the firewood into it with the bucket. And that's leading into a trommel here, which takes out all the small clippings and dust and bark. And then we've got an outfeed conveyor that is bagging the firewood. So we have a frame here, and one of the really interesting things that we have is it's automated via remote control, so it's a one-man operation. So what one of us can do is be sitting in the teleporter loading the cleaner, and we can have a remote that operates the outfeed conveyor to swing left to right. The remote control also operates the boom on the teleporter, so we can move the boom in and out to fill the front or the back bags. It's not an overly complicated innovation. It's quite simple really, but it really makes bagging the firewood really efficient. So the final level then is the marketing. So we predominantly sell our firewood to residential homeowners in Limerick and in Kerry. And I believe there are only two segments of people who burn firewood in the residential sector, and for very different reasons. You have low-income households who are dependent on it to heat their homes affordably. And then you have mid to high-income households who are dependent on it or who want to see a flame. So we also sell some net bags to some of our local supermarkets and co-ops, and we supply other firewood sellers too. But the main way we sell our firewood is in bulk bags like this. And we sell three products. We've got classic firewood, the one in the middle, and that's under 25% moisture content, and it's really suited to open fires and older stoves. We then have kiln dried standard firewood, which is under 20% moisture content, and this is suited to the high performance stoves. It's called kiln dried standard because we don't actually have a kiln on the farm. We are able to achieve the same level of quality simply by air drying. And studies before thought it couldn't be done, so we challenged this, and we first proved it on a test scale, and then we became the first to actually do it at a commercial scale. So we're really proud about that. It has since been adopted by the market as the term to describe air dried firewood that is under 20% moisture. We also sell chunky logs on the right, which is a specialist product. The pieces are cut to a 20 centimeter diameter, so bigger diameter, and is targeted for larger stoves or perhaps where people are looking for the longer lasting burn that hardwood gives, but at a softwood price. So then on to labeling. And in line with our requirements under Wfqa, we provide a high degree of transparency to our customers so they can clearly understand what they are buying. So on the label, we specify that the bulk bag weighs 250 grams. We specify a moisture content of 20%, and we tell them the length and the diameter. Having this basic level of standards and information is really essential. Now, it's not a requirement of Wfqa, but we also provide the energy content. So we tell the customer that there's 1,032 kilowatts of energy in the bag. That's based on a net calorific value, 4.13 kilowatts per kilo, as you see on the label. So in terms of pricing, we sell the classic firewood bulk bags at €60. You see the ones, and you've got the KDS and the bulk bags, we sell them at €70. Interesting story, but one year we actually ran out of classic. All we had was the KDS, the kiln dried standard, so people had to move over to it in the interim. And we didn't get classic back in until about 4 months later. And when we told people it was back in stock, only about 5% moved back. So they were actually happy enough to stick with the kiln dried standard, the higher quality stuff, and they were happy enough to pay the premium. So for us, it was really proof that quality stands and quality sells. So we should all be striving to meet the standard. So we market the product on social media, mainly Facebook, and we sell it through our website. We use a custom built truck with an 11-meter crane to deliver the firewood, and customers really love this because we can get the firewood right into their shed or to their side gate or what have you, and this level of convenience is something that not many competitors can offer. So COVID has actually been a net positive for many producers. We've been allowed to continue largely as normal with social distancing measures in place, and as people have been spending a lot more time at home, their heating needs have increased. So we're coming near the end of a very successful season, and I guess we're hopeful for an even better one next year. So on to a bit of advice, and just want to share some general thoughts on what I think one should know before starting a firewood business. So firstly, it's just simply a good thing to do, and it's hugely beneficial. Join and become a member of the Wood Fuel Quality Assurance Scheme. It's one of the best decisions we've made, and it's been really beneficial. We wouldn't be where we are today, as I say. The certification is really valuable in giving consumers confidence in the firewood we sell, and it's a great marketing boon. It also sets us a standard to achieve, and we like to do things right. So this way we are accountable, and it ensures we always do things right. You simply can't go wrong if you're a member, because you'll be complying with the standard. So you'll never put substandard, inferior firewood out on the market. And I wouldn't underestimate the power of marketing either. The group is very inclusive, so everyone is trying to help each other. So for example, before COVID, Wfqa ran a number of open days where other firewood suppliers and anyone else interested was invited to a member site, and we would show them how we do what we do. So we're very open with information. We all want to help each other in the end of the day, and it's in everyone's interest that everyone gets better at what they do. And lastly, I would say to go slow, to go fast later. You know, as humans, we have a tendency to put the cart before the horse, but as a business owner, you need to take your time, and you need to get the basics right. Because if you don't get the basics right, you won't be able to solve these problems later, and you'll make big and expensive mistakes. So go slow to go fast later. I mean, we've made loads of mistakes, but fixing a problem for a few locals or family and friends that we've gotten to test out the product at a very early stage is a lot easier than fixing them for 100 angry paying customers all over the place. So finally, I guess, where are we going next? I mean, our overall aim is simple. It's not to be the biggest firewood producer, but it is to be the best. And I suppose we are conscious that if we get much bigger in terms of scale, that we're going to turn our farm into a firewood factory with loads of sheds, and we don't want that. Everything has a good size, has a right size, has an appropriate size. And I think we've about reached that with the firewood. What we're primarily doing now is working on policy issues, along with working to promote firewood as an ideal substitute for coal turf and wet firewood to improve air quality and dramatically reduce carbon emissions. And I guess outside of the firewood, what myself and Jack do is we also run a business called Cotter Agritech, which is commercializing an innovative and patented lamb handling system. And this is going really well for us, and we're hoping to launch it later this year. And then we also set up and run Cotter Organic Lamb, which direct sells the organic 100% grass-fed lamb we produce on the farm. And this has been another really successful venture for us. I actually had the privilege of being on the Late Late Show with it, advertising the business last March, and we won an Irish Quality Food Award with it in 2019. Alongside these businesses, I'm currently in my second year of law and business in UCC, and my brother Jack is in his final year in engineering in LIT. So I guess between college and between these three businesses, we're not inclined to take on much more work, trying to enjoy a little bit of college life, albeit college life during COVID-19. But I suppose nonetheless, we've had this much opportunity come our way this far, and we're currently just making the most of our assets and making the most of the opportunities that have come our way. And we'll be keeping an eye on the trends and following those trends as they come up, and taking opportunities that suit our model and what we do. So it's been fun speaking to you this morning. I'll be keeping an eye on the questions and start to prep answers for them. And I look forward to doing this again in the future many times. Thank you.
Very good. And thanks very much, Nick, for your excellent presentation. And you're certainly an inspirational entrepreneur. And I wish you the very best of luck in your,
thank you, Sean,
in your future businesses and future career paths, and certainly a bright future lies ahead for you and Jack indeed as well. And we are delighted to have you this morning. Before we go into the panel discussion and questions and answers, I'd ask just Noel, would you be able to turn on your camera and maybe join us? And if you have any questions If you would please put them in on the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, and we will endeavour to answer them as best we can. Before I just open up the discussion, I'd just like to acknowledge the support of the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine for the Wood Fuel Quality Assurance Scheme programme. They provide some funding to us on an annual basis for the promotion of the scheme. And I suppose if I could hand over to you, Noel, maybe you are the administrator and the manager of the Wood Fuel Quality Assurance programme. And just for the benefit of attendees this morning, if you give us an outline of maybe what's involved just briefly in getting certified, in case there's anyone on the call that would like to embark upon that process. Maybe if you could just give us a run through of what the main...
Yeah, I suppose simply, and it's I know it's one or two there that I've been in discussions with lately who are looking at joining the scheme. Basically what we do is, a supplier, say, such as Cotters or anyone that comes on board, we're looking for three things. And it's all centered around the Renewable Energy Directive, as well as getting the right things for the consumer. But what we're looking for is a sustainable product. We're looking for a quality product, and we're also making sure that the customer gets the right information and is getting what they're told they're getting. So in terms of a sustainable product, the RED II directive is very clear on what's required. In terms of, we're looking at protection of watercourses, protection of natural ecosystems, that the forest is managed in a manner that's sustainable. And that's all covered under the felling licensing system through the Department of Agriculture. In fairness, they have a good system there whereby if you want a felling license to go in and it's in your forest or harvest, you need to follow a proper sustainability plan on that. So it's very good in terms of how it looks after the local environment and the national environment as well, really, in many ways. So the first thing is you have to show compliance to the felling licensing. And that's relatively easy for us to do as auditors, because we can, every load is accompanied by a felling license number. So that's easy done. The next thing, and Nick was doing a little bit on screen, which is the quality of the firewood itself, or the product. So we would certify firewood, wood chip, wood pellet, and also wood briquettes. And one of the main parameters in quality is the moisture content. That really affects everything from the efficiency of how it burns to the emissions that it'll produce after combustion. And it really is the main criteria when you're looking at wood fuels. I don't think anything else comes close to determining the quality aspects. You have other things when it comes to pellets, such as the durability of the pellet and levels of dust and things like that. But it predominantly is to do with the moisture content. And then the last thing we're looking for is the packaging, so that if the customer is told that they're getting a certain product, that they're getting that. So, for example, weights and measures is a key part. And we ensure that the labelling, there is labelling requirements within the scheme. And like Nick was showing some of their packaging earlier on, so whether it's a volume measure or a weight measure, the moisture content, where it's coming from, just to back up so that the customer knows what they're getting. So that's really it in a nutshell.
And Noel, just a follow-on question there from Will that has come in. What is the cost associated with joining the WFQA, and how often are samples taken to achieve qualification?
We would do cost dependent on the scale you're at, and included in that is the membership of the Irish Bioenergy Association. So the Irish Bioenergy Association would carry out a lot of the events and the marketing, as well as the WFQA itself. So we keep a certain bit of distance between, obviously, the auditing process and the marketing, because auditing it has to stand separate. Costs would range depending on the scale you're at, usually from 600 up to a little over €1,000, depends on that would include membership of IRBA and a few other benefits in there as well. But there is an audit cost, which in that, and there's a number of testing, tests that have to be carried out, and all of that comes into the laboratory cost.
And how often are the samples taken, Noel? Just
within the scheme, we would require the consumer, the supplier, to take samples depending on the scale they're at. It's per batch. So, say for example, when you're doing firewood, we would look at that. There's a batch done every, between. You would know by the person you're dealing with and the setup they have, that if I go into Cotter's, for example, if Nick doesn't mind me saying it, I can see what batches they have. So batches there would tend to have, there could be, anywhere up to about 10 ton per batch. And in that, I would be looking for samples done on that. Now, in fairness, there's one supplier who does a huge amount of testing. So within that, we have to show confidence that the testing that they're doing has got, is determining that all of it is at the right level. There is tables that we use to determine exactly how many samples to take. So I think it's, say, for example, if we're going to a supplier of firewood, we'll take 6 bags per stock, and that's a standard practice within different sampling. When you're looking at wood chip, you will go around the store, take maybe 80 samples and condense that down into 1 sample or 2 samples. So there's different regimes in how often we would sample as an auditor. We would tend to do 1 sample per year as an auditor, but within that, we're checking up everything else to do. And when I'm doing a test as auditor, I'm not actually testing the fuel. I'm testing the ability of the supplier to determine what the quality is. It's because ultimately I can't be there every day, and as an auditor, you can't be there every day. And what we're really checking is to make sure that the supplier has got the ability and has got the procedures in place to carry out that testing themselves on a regular basis, and that we can all have confidence in what they're supplying.
And just to follow on from that, Noel, you would also do some random sampling if you were with certain suppliers?
Yeah, we've had, each year we would do a certain amount of random sampling in both of suppliers and also of the market itself. And, it's sometimes it's on foot of somebody will make a phone call over, someone might have an issue. And although it's rare enough, but that has happened. And we would obviously go and take random samples at a point of that, sometimes at the point of sale, sometimes on the supplier site. And within the scheme, we can take random samples over the course of the year. If often it's the case, you might be passing somebody and it might be appropriate to go in and just take a random sample to see how things are going.
Okay, just bring back in Nick there. Nick, you outlined, you mentioned and focused very strongly in your presentation the actual benefits of the Wfqa. Now, you outlined the benefits in terms of labeling or whatever. Can you maybe outline the benefits of the Wfqa from the point of view of the networking opportunity it gives and the interaction it gives with fellow Wfqa certified suppliers? Can you just give us an outline of that type of network, how that can assist and help you and your business?
Yeah, I suppose, I'll go back to an example that happened a couple of years ago. We were looking to upgrade off the firewood processor that we bought day one, which was the cheapest processor that's available on the market, of course, being young and not perhaps taking it seriously. But at the time, it's hugely beneficial because we were able to visit one of the other Wfqa producers, and he was able to tell us from years of using the thing, honest, and tell us what's good and bad. And we were able to make a decision there and then. So even at very basic things like equipment and that side of things, your physical infrastructure, being able to see what someone else is doing right there in front of you is hugely beneficial. And then I suppose hearing what kind of market conditions are like from other suppliers, being able to figure out how they are doing their things as well. Like, we don't know everything, and look, we do things as good as we can, but there's always other people doing things perhaps a bit better, or there's ways that we can learn from, and being able to see how other people are doing things has been hugely beneficial in refining what we do. And that's most of what we're doing at the moment. It's trying to get close the efficiency gaps and get things optimized as much as possible, and being able to go to open days where other producers are showing us how they do what they do. We've been able to take learnings out of that and apply them.
Okay, thanks very much, Nick. I suppose the other area which we would hope to look at into the future would be, is there possible potential cost savings that could be brought to members as a result of maybe bulk buying of bags or various other things? So I think there's probably plenty of potential to look into that type of an area as well with regard to the Wfqa. Just a couple of questions in there, Nick. A question from Dermot, and thanks for joining us, Dermot. Where do you see the firewood business in the medium to long term? So would you like to comment on that, Nick? Yeah,
I suppose we're in an ideal position because being certified by Wfqa and with a solid fuel regulation coming in likely possibly before the end of the year or early next year, we're in an ideal position because we've met the standard already. The way I see firewood in general is that the burning of substandard wet firewood is causing unnecessary issues. and there's a lot of firewood out there doing that. So what we need to do really is to stop burning the wet firewood. And if we do this, we can significantly reduce the particulate matter emissions and improve air quality. And I suppose this is an issue that simply has to be addressed.
We might come back to that, Nick, if you don't mind,
yeah,
in a minute, just because of the question there from Tony and a couple of other comments. We might come back to the whole solid fuel and quality thing. Just a couple of other questions there before we move on to that. A question there from John. He's wondering about 50mm oak thinnings. Are they of any value, or what would your recommendation be for him in terms of those?
Yeah, of course they're of value. Like, I mean, I talk about our 15cm diameter target. I suppose we're trying to produce a very standardized product that's going to suit lots of different types of stove, perhaps with some smaller material. I mean, look, there isn't per se an issue with it. It can still be burned. In particular, if you're talking about oak, it's actually a bit ideal that it's a smaller size because it's going to have an easier time combusting and being able to burn off those volatiles. So I never say there wouldn't be a value. 100% there is a value to it. And so as I say, yeah, it just
turn that into quality material.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is all in line with the whole cascading use of firewood. Like, what we're trying to do is make best use of everything that's produced out of that forest and trying to put it to that best use.
Yeah. Again, if it's not useful for firewood, it would be ideal for wood chip. So it's
okay. Thanks, Noel. One question in there from Donal. You referenced, Nick, in your presentation that you were using some spruce. I think you said pine and larch were the three product softwoods. Donald just makes a comment here, and that it's not a favoured, spruce isn't a favoured term in terms of biodiversity. Often described as I suppose the equivalent of the Frisian cow in the dairy industry in terms of its need for or its stability in terms of production. Could you comment on that? How do we counteract that negativity around spruce in terms of biodiversity?
Yeah, it's about balance. That's what it comes back to. I mean, I know years before you would be looking at trying to plant an entirely spruce plantation that's like it's ubiquitous across it. It's 100% spruce that you're planting. I mean, as I say, nowadays there are more concerns. We need to also factor in biodiversity concerns and providing that habitat. So what it is providing the balance. I mean, at the end of the day, forestry still needs to be commercially viable for the farmer, and they need to be able to make a profit on it, or else they simply won't plant. And I think that's a way worse outcome altogether. So it's trying to provide balance. So the way to really do that is to be planting the spruce that is commercially viable alongside some maybe broadleaf that will provide that biodiversity aspect of things. But it's just to maintain balance. It's not to have too much of anything.
And in terms of your own availability of supply, Nick, of raw material for your processing business, have you noticed any impact in the last number of months? And or do you is it your own grown material that you're using, or is it bought from foresters that are thinning forests across the region?
Yeah, it's a mix. Like, we would have a nice amount of forestry ourselves. My dad was a forester previously and ran a forestry business. So I suppose we have access to forestry ourselves, and then we have access to his previous clients that those forests would be coming up towards thinning time. But it's all about trying to keep it local. I mean, one of the most expensive costs we have is transport, and it wouldn't be sensible to be traveling up to the Midlands to go after some hardwood, cut it down, transport it back here. It's just inefficient, and it goes against what we're trying to do. It's all about having the fuel of the region for the region, and we found softwood. It's the easiest thing to work with. It's in plentiful supply locally, so it's the most sensible thing to do.
Okay, thanks for that, Nick. And if any of our attendees this morning have any questions, feel free to continue to post them into the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. I suppose we move along and maybe just have a bit of a discussion around the solid fuel regulation and the consultation. And I see we have one or two questions in here on that, which we will come to in a minute. So the consultation was launched by the Department of the Environment, Communications and Climate in the last week. I think the deadline is late March, early April for responses. This is an area which RB has been working on with our members for a long number of years. We have a policy proposal around regulating firewood to eliminate wet firewood from the market. We believe that should be implemented over a phased basis. We have outlined how that can be done. It involves the amendment of a statutory instrument which already exists, so it doesn't, we believe, require primary legislation. It's possible to do it from a legal perspective through amendment to a statutory instrument which exists. So, Nick, do you want to just outline maybe what you believe needs to happen in terms of regulating the firewood market, and how can we remove some of this wet material from the market, which is causing issues from a particulates and air quality perspective?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, a very sensible proposal was put forward by yourselves, Wfqa, and that is to remove the wet firewood off the market by setting a maximum moisture content of 25% moisture content for firewood sold on the market, and then at a later point reduce that maximum down to 20%, which is ideally where you want to be kind of early 2023. So fully support this proposal. As I said, the wet wood out there is causing unnecessary air quality issues, and it is a serious issue that must be addressed. However, I would want to emphasize that dry firewood is quite different. I mean, when you switch from wet wood to dry wood in an appliance, you reduce particulate matter by 70 to 90%. It's a huge reduction. So I suppose I would be concerned that in some circles, recent debate has turned on banning all solid fuels, and that in this ideal world that we'd burn nothing. But I suppose legislators and the general public need to look at it for, I look at a good example being the incentivization of diesel cars years ago, and evaluating and making decisions on anything based on a single criterion is a recipe for making a poor decision. So I suppose on the flip side, while we have 1,300 deaths being caused every year because of poor air quality, you also have an additional problem related to fuel poverty and excess deaths arising from that. So to give you a figure, it was estimated in 2015 that 2,800 deaths occurred annually across Ireland as a result of inadequate heating. And this doesn't get near as much attention as the figure for the air pollution related deaths. So I suppose if governments take all these products, all the solid fuels off the market, something must be left to fill the gap, or else you will have fuel poverty will just be exacerbated. And fuel poverty does need to be addressed because it's critical for a just transition, and it's critical from a social justice point of view. I suppose the other issue you have, and perhaps the bigger fish that we're all trying to fry, is the carbon emissions argument. And I believe that dry firewood in particular should be used in the domestic sector because of its suitability. And I mean, the International Energy Agency has stressed that the domestic sector is the hardest to decarbonize. So I suppose to give numbers on it, if a homeowner switched from oil to firewood, you're looking at a reduction 2.7 tons in their yearly carbon emissions. And if they switched from coal to firewood, it would reduce their emissions by 4 tons. And I mean, living car-free equates to a 2-ton reduction, and going vegan is only an 800 kilogram reduction. So dare I say it, and I've said it before, it's one of the best things that a homeowner can do to reduce carbon emissions. So I suppose it's important to weigh up all these factors and look at firewood. I mean, in an ideal world, and the ideal solution here is 100% electrified heat delivered by heat pumps across every single household in Ireland. But the reality is you have poor housing stock, you have unsuitability of heat pumps, and you have fuel poverty. And these are realities that we have to face. So, I mean, as much as you can look at getting heat pumps in over a 10, 15-year period, it's going to take time, and it takes a huge amount of money. Firewood is here now, and it can be a short and medium-term solution to improve air quality by regulating and removing the wet firewood, and then by incentivizing it, I believe.
Okay, thanks, Nick. That's a very good outline of it. If I could bring you in, Noel, now, obviously critical to also to air quality is the appliance. So maybe can you just outline what's coming down the tracks in terms of eco-design, and also maybe if any of the research that has been done around wood fuels and particulates in terms of the impact of moisture?
Yeah, there's been quite a bit of work done on the list this past. There's a need for more, I have to say, in terms of getting the full figures around it. But I have just some figures on screen in front of me here as we're talking. In terms of your eco-design stove, essentially what we've got, a number of different technologies for solid fuel. You've obviously an open fire, very old technology. You have the stoves which people have put in for many years, which are more efficient. They are better. They're generally, up to maybe 30, 40% or 50% better in terms of air pollutants, particulates. When you go to an eco-design stove, though, you're reducing those emissions by up to 90%. So it is a massive difference in terms of the level of particulates, and that's just using the same fuel. When you change the fuel as well, you also get a significant reduction in those emissions. When you go to, say, a pellet stove, you're going down again to up to 95 to 97% reduction. I'm just a figures on the screen in front of me. It's 15 grams for an open fire per hour, whereas a pellet stove is half a gram. And an eco-design stove is 1.5 grams per hour. So compare that to where in this new consultation, there's one consideration they're looking at is limiting all fuels to 10 grams per hour. So the wood fuels would actually would have no problem whatsoever at all coming in under 10 grams. So there is many things there that that are pointing that wood fuels really have a strong place in this area. They obviously, when you compare particulate emissions, were very low on that, but also one of the lowest in terms of carbon emissions, which is also critically important. So it's the appliances is critically important, and the fuel quality, and I think we need to address those. And it's great to see that new consultation coming out, and that we will be clearly looking for reductions in the moisture content requirement, and first of all regulation of firewood, because there isn't a regulation there at the moment. So we will be looking for that, and that will allow us to start addressing the issues.
Okay, thanks, Noel. If I could bring you in, Nick, there, just a question from Tony. How would you see a potential national ban on smoky coal, unseasoned wood, and potentially turf affecting your business, both in increased demand for firewood and the price of the unprocessed raw material?
Yeah, I mean, there is highly likely to be a good uptake in terms of demand, because, as I say, something is going to have to replace those fuels. I mean, you will still have smokeless coal on the market, and you will have a certain amount of turf on the market, so it won't be completely removed from all circles. But certainly we would be trying to emphasize that dry firewood should be the one to replace those other fuels, because of almost negligible carbon intensity. It's carbon neutral, and then the significant improvements on air quality. So I think it's a very positive and good thing that there is an increase in demand from a public policy and public health point of view.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Noel, if I could bring you back in then. We have seen, and I know that some of our members would have said that the regulation around smoky coal and isn't being maybe enforced as well as it should. And just a question here from Will: how would new legislation around the whole wood fuels area be enforced? Can you just explain maybe the background to the importance of legislation?
Yeah, it's the first thing, I suppose. Yes, enforcement is always an issue, but we would really have a position that will, first of all, there's nothing to enforce. So if we have an enforceable position, first of all, the multiples who sell quite a lot of firewood, the likes of your Tesco's, Lidl's, Aldi's, and your petrol stations and service stations, they sell quite a lot of material. And if they are, they're not going to be outside the law. And when you've got legitimate suppliers, obviously anyone that's certified in us, we are requiring to be legitimate suppliers. And when you have legitimate suppliers behaving correctly, and that makes a huge difference in the marketplace itself. The customers get more informed, and they're much better able to make informed decisions, because ultimately what's good about this is regulated fuel with low moisture content is actually far better for the consumer, and they get used to that. As Nick said, when they ran out of their standard product and only had highly dried product available, their customers would love to stay on that even when the other material came back online. So in fairness, from that point of view, there's things we can do now, but it is going to be difficult to regulate certain sections of the market. That's without a doubt. We don't have the disadvantage that they had in the coal market, in that one of the biggest issues they have in the coal market is there's no carbon tax in Northern Ireland. So there's a lot of stuff flowing back and forth because of that. So that's not going to be an issue. But where you do a difference in regulations north and south, it will cause material to flow to a certain extent. Not so much in the wood fuel, but it will to a certain extent. And we had a consultation last week in Northern Ireland where they are looking to do something very similar here in terms of regulating the moisture content of firewood. So in fairness, we could have very similar requirements both north and south, and that will stop any of that, stop any advantage to cross material over the border.
And Noel, is it the local authorities that you would be proposing would be the actual enforcers of this?
It would come down to them. Yes, it would come down to them. It would be they would be required to take that on board. So, and again, as I said earlier, it would be easier for them to look at the likes of the shop fronts and those that are openly advertising their products. That's the first part. But again, they've already have people in the division for air quality. So it would make a lot of sense for them to be also looking at the material, the fuel quality that's out there. And if you've got the fuel quality right, then you've got the benefits for air quality.
Can you outline, Noel, for us here or for the attendees as well, what we do as an organisation, or indeed the Wfqa does, I know in conjunction with the Department of Agriculture, to upskill firewood producers, which mightn't necessarily be in the WFQA, but maybe working towards being involved in a certified scheme. Can you just outline some of that work? I know COVID has probably affected and impacted on that, but what we do as an organisation and to upskill the market as such.
Yeah, there is, first of all, we have our own website, obviously, wfqa.org, but also a Department of Ag have a website called woodenergy.ie, and it's worth looking at. So but within what we've done directly with the Department of Ag over the last number of years is we started running a number of field events for suppliers. So, for example, we went to Cotter's, I think it was probably 18 months ago at this stage. We've been up to Sherlock's, and we're in Roscommon, Harry Woods, and we've been in different places around the country with different suppliers, where we're able to show people exactly how to carry out the business and how to dry the firewood correctly, how to package it correctly, how to process it. And in fairness, the members have been very generous with their time and in opening up their gates and letting people in and to look at how it's done. Because there's a general consensus within the industry that we need to get everybody doing this right. And in fairness, they are very generous with their time. They are very generous in helping us promote the proper production of wood fuels, the proper sourcing of the material that you're going to use for that. So it's like mostly what we would be using as tinnings, as Nick had on one of the slides earlier on, the other products that come out of timber, and they're the more valuable ones. When you have a standing tree, the valuable product coming out of it is the sawmill timber. Really, firewood is a secondary product, and as is wood chip, these are the when you can do nothing else with the timber, this is where it goes. But you're talking about 30% of the forest crop will not be usable in a sawmill, so therefore it will be available for energy. So it's one complements the other in most ways.
Okay, just if I could bring you in, Nick, there, and more of a general question about the benefits of a business like yours to rural Ireland and to your rural economy. Can you could you quantify that for us, Nick, or could you just outline maybe the benefits that a business like yours is bringing to your particular parish and the community around in terms of employment, in terms of economic activity? Would you have?
Yeah, I mean, by utilising our own indigenous supply locally of wood fuel, I mean, the study that was done by the Western Development Commission years ago is the one I still use for this, but I mean, 1,000 tonne of firewood leaves €250,000 in the economy, and the same usage of oil is only leaving 15,000. So there's massive benefit. As I say, it's all part of the circular economy. It's being grown locally. The work that's being done is by local people who work for us, and it's being delivered locally to local people and being burned by people locally. As I said, I think we sell nationally, fair enough, but I'd say the percentage of firewood that moves outside Limerick and Kerry might be 1% or less of our business. 99% of what we do is directly into Limerick and really North Kerry, to be honest. So it's really a great local business, and that's why I suppose you mentioned, Sean, about in relation to upskilling and training. We're very open with trying to get other people to be doing the same thing that we're doing, and everyone else in Wfqa has the same approach, because it's a massive market. I mean, sure, you might say they're our competition, but if some producer up in Galway is looking to figure out how to moisture content test a bit more accurately, or how to dry the firewood a bit faster, we've no problem sharing all that knowledge, because that's our own market, and it's in everyone's benefit that more dry firewood is used to replace the dirty fossil fuels.
Okay, thanks, Nick. I suppose we'll go on maybe just to talk about appliances for a second, and I'd like to hear your views on that. Currently, the Irish Bioenergy Association, through our association with Renewable Energy Ireland, are developing a renewable heat plan for Ireland. The work has been completed by XD Consulting and is near completion. As part of that report, it's very clear that biomass and wood fuels and wood chip has a key role to play in the decarbonisation of our heat sector. But obviously, critical to that is that biomass would be used at various levels. It would be used at a domestic level, at an industrial level, and at a high temperature heat level. Can you maybe outline some of, and we are going to be working on a policy paper around what supports would be required at a domestic level to incentivize maybe the changeover from open fires to more stoves and eco-design stoves. And there's a question there from Donald around that, and a comment wondering what percentage of open fires are out there. I'm not sure if we have that figure, but surely the regulation is going to move people from open fires to more closed stoves and eco-design stoves. So would you be able to comment on that, Nick, and your thoughts on that? What's required to help and assist homeowners that want to make that transition to a better appliance, which will also help and address the air quality concerns?
Yeah, I mean, at the very basic level, we need to address the fuel, because if you move from the fossil fuels and wet firewood onto dry firewood, you achieve the first 70 to 90% reduction. So what we'd ideally like to see, and we've talked about it for a while, is a domestic support scheme for renewable heat. So it's a DSSRH. And under this proposed scheme, homeowners would receive an incentive for burning dry certified firewood. And what we look at then doing is that after a certain period, the homeowner would actually be required to install an eco-design stove. So then we get the second reduction, which is a further 70 to 90% reduction by moving from older appliances like old stoves and open fires into these real new, efficient and low emissions eco-design stoves. So what we could do with this is basically modernize home heating appliances and change fuel use in a 3 to 5 year period. And to my knowledge, I can't see any other plan being able to deliver such significant benefits in such a short period of time. And I suppose then what we're looking at as an extension onto that is that, I mean, as I say, in an ideal world, we'd burn nothing, but legislators and the government need to bring people with them. And if we want to make air quality as good as it can possibly be, we'd ideally like to see negligible or next to no emissions. And in order to achieve that, we fix the fuel, we fix the appliance, and then later down the line, there is some really exciting technology around electrostatic precipitators. So these are actually used more commonly in an industrial setting, and basically it catches the particulate matter before it goes out of your chimney stack. So, I mean, they're already commercially available to the public over in Austria in particular, where they're seeing increased use by homeowners. They're coming in around the cost of €1,200, and I believe that we could bring them into Europe and into Ireland specifically. I mean, once you achieve economies of scale and then you get reductions in costs by a number of factors, you can make these commercially available to people, and then we can live in a world where you have negligible or next to no air emissions at all. And I would say that we need to look at approaches like this as opposed to one where we say, oh, we'll be able to ban all solid fuels and we can stop it all, because we need to be pragmatic and realistic if we're actually going to solve problems. There is no point living in fantasy land where we can put a heat pump into every single home and we can make electricity 100% renewable, because electricity isn't 100% renewable yet, and not every home is going to be suitable for a heat pump. So it's important to realize that solid fuel heating will have a place going forward, and for quite a long time going forward.
Okay, thanks very much, Nick. And Donald's question there, there is a few questions within the consultation about this particular aspect in terms of the appliances as well. And just to let all attendees know this morning that we will be working over the next couple of weeks on some to provide some information to members of the WFQA and the DRBA members and encourage so that can be used in the consultation response, technical information, and we would encourage as many people as possible to make a return to the consultation, solid fuel regulation consultation. One last question, because we're just gone over time. One last question for you, Noel. Will ask it. Limitation of supply and increasing cost of raw material has made it tricky for the last couple of years in the industry. Small producers supplying locally sourced timber is critical in terms of biofuels. What are RBA doing and also the WFQA to promote and protect these suppliers in times of market volatility as some of these have gone out of business? So, Noel, do you want to comment? Excuse me. Do you want to comment on the availability of supply and maybe what we're doing?
There has been considerable supply issues in the past 18 months, and particularly in the last 12 months, in terms of the felling licensing issue. For those that are not aware, most people anywhere connected to the industry will be aware that there was a major hold-up in felling licenses being issued by the Department of Agriculture, mainly due to huge amounts of objections from a small group of let's just call them dedicated people. And it did create some huge difficulties. We've had sawmills quite laying off staff. We've had sawmills, someone on the verge of going under. I'm not sure if any have. I'm not sure about the name, but I know smaller companies have had losses, and it's been horrendous. And it has had a detrimental effect on the supply. But not only that, has it had a detrimental effect on the short-term supply. We've seen our planting rates absolutely plummet. It has destroyed. Where we were looking for 8,000 hectares per year, we went to 2,000 hectares last year. Now we're looking at a dramatic reduction in that as well, where actually we'll be taking out more forestry than we're actually putting back in. So whereas we were getting planting rates and pushing to get planting rates of, say, broadleaf, and this is what some of the objectors were looking for, we were up to a properly functioning scheme would give us, say, 1,500, 1,600 hectares per year of broadleaf planting. We're now down to a couple of hundred because of this. So it has, it's really destroyed, and it's been environmental sabotage in many ways, because it's destroyed the view of planting for most landowners in the country, and it's going to take some time to recover that. So the long-term supply, we need. Okay, I absolutely agree. We need to have our ecosystems protected, and we need to be looking at broadleaf as well. But we also need sustainable materials for building. And that comes from your Sitka and from your softwoods. We can't have a functioning, economy going forward that's going to be linked into a circular economy without softwoods. They are a critical component. So unfortunately, what's happened is a disaster, and it has a knock-on effect on every aspect of the wood industry, from wood fuel right through to the sawmills. And we're importing timber at the moment. The softwoods have to be grown somewhere. Are we just going to use the idea of importing them instead of growing them here? We do need an element of them here. I don't agree with the mantra that they don't support any biological life, only themselves, because when you do look at the full growth cycle, there is a period of time, say from canopy closure up to first innings, where yes, there's very little growing apart from the trees. But outside of that, which is about 60% of the growing season or growing period over the 40 years life cycle, you have a lot of other species in there and a lot more activity in there on the ground that they don't seem to be cognizant of.
Okay, thanks very much, Noel, for your response, and thanks for the question, Will. So that really concludes our webinar for this morning. I do thank all our attendees this morning for joining us. I apologize, we've gone just a couple of minutes over time. I would like to thank Nick Cotter for joining us this morning and giving an insight into his business and his thoughts on this whole area. I wish you the best of luck, Nick, in your future endeavors, and thank you. I'd like to also acknowledge Teresa O'Brien. Thank you, Teresa, for your work behind the scenes to make all this happen, and for your assistance to ensure that the webinar rolled out successfully this morning, and has done for the last and 8 or 10 months that we've been doing them at this stage. So with that, again, thanks to you all for joining. We look forward to welcoming you back in 2 weeks' time. And we will conclude just to say, stay safe in these unprecedented times, and we look forward to welcoming you online again for the next webinar. Thanks very much, everyone. See you now.